It was another glorious hunt for Garther Lanks. The weaklings cowered in their glistering buildings as he looked down upon the Ceresians. Their artistic stylings and architecture further confirmed their inferiority as a species. Today, he and his brothers would show these drakes the true power and glory of the Jafraxian Empire. The plasma coils thrummed with sinister energy as a burning ball of plasma was hurled at the nearest building. Garther Lanks watched with contempt as puny specks ran from the building, attempting to flee the coming destruction. None would escape their greatness. The ball of plasma hit with extreme prejudice, detonating as the magnetic field that contained it collapsed. The explosion created a massive hole in the building, sending burning debris in all directions. Garther Lanks could almost hear the screams, relishing the thought of their terror in the face of certain death. The building shifted and collapsed on itself. Truly pathetic, he thought. Their architecture couldn't even stand one blast from an auxiliary cannon. The remaining buildings were toppled in a similar manner, each collapse filling Garther Lanks with great pride and bloodlust. Soon, he thought, the hunt would begin. The dropship was electric with excitement. Every Jafraxian continued to polish their weapons, armor, and most importantly, their pride. Today is claimed, the commander announced. Today we will gain much glory for ourselves. Today we will bring home many trophies by the will of the Emperor. By the will of the Emperor, cried the rest of the unit in unison. Garther Lanks beamed with pride. It was only his second mission as a member of the prestigious Emperor's Hand, and the first was merely as an honor guard for his eminence and honor, to be sure, but he craved the action that would win him respect and trophies. The dropship reached deployment height, and the raucous crew were brought to attention by the commander. His armor glimmered as the light filtered in from the drop doors opening. First Squad and Third Squad, you will be tasked with sectors Alpha through Charlie, clearing the remains and looking for survivors to exterminate. Second Squad, you will hunt down the fleeing units. Second Squad cheered with war cries and savage bellows. Executing survivors brought glory, but the thrill of the hunt would bring even greater honor for them. The squads deployed, and Garther Lanks watched as they spread out. The commander led Second Squad into the neighboring forest, where Garther Lanks lost sight of them. The sweep of the remains was uneventful. No living beings were found among the wreckage. The presence of medical goods and sickly corpses told them that this had been a medical facility. The squads were at first despondent, worried that their enemy was so weak that they had all been killed by the bombardment. But then they found tracks leading out into the neighboring areas, and a sense of excitement and bloodlust filled the soldiers. A hunt was to be had. After checking in with the commander, they were authorized to pursue the survivors, and so they marched into the woods. The canopies of the forest were thick, almost no light pervaded through their foliage. The lights the units used allowed them to sweep the area with relative ease, but they found no survivors, only more tracks. A few soldiers became impatient and broke rank to trace down their prey. The squad leaders allowed this, and soon the rest of the unit took off on their hunt. Garther Lanks traveled no more than 200 meters when he heard a cry of pain over the comms, then another. The squad leader called out for a report, but no reply came. A few moments passed, and the squad leader ordered the group to form up and continue their sweep correctly. The group returned to find that 3 soldiers were missing. None of the others had seen anything, and there was no reply when a comm check went out. The squad leaders called for the unit to set up camp while they waited for the missing soldiers to return. The unit set up their bubble shield and began building their camp. Food was eaten, and the darkness of the forest became more palpable as the planet's star disappeared from the horizon. The next morning, reports came in from the other squads. Third Squad had lost soldiers on a patrol, and Second Squad reported movement on their perimeter. The commander was angry and scolded the squad leaders for allowing their pride to overcome their common sense. He ordered the unit to take more care and continue their hunt. Little did any of them know what the day held in store. They were immediately greeted by treacherous terrain, with some soldiers falling to their deaths, impaled by sharp sticks that penetrated the soles of their boots. Upon further investigation, these appeared to be the result of intentionally set traps. Moving through the forest slowed to a snail's pace, and the nerves of the soldiers frayed as they began to know terror. Despite their caution, traps continued to claim soldier after soldier. The potency of the traps became more severe, expanding into explosive traps and mines. Not only did Garther Lanks' squad have to deal with these machinations, but after hearing an explosion rumble in the distance, Garther Lanks knew the other squads were being subjected to the same fate. He realized at that moment that they were no longer the hunters, but the hunted. The day was nearing its end when a bloodied soldier limped toward the squad. The squad leader approached him and asked what had happened. The soldier looked at him with horror and said, "It's a monster. I've never seen anything like it before. It moves so fast and silently." The commander. He's dead. The soldier seemed to tremble as every fiber of his being tensed in fear. The commander died in one massive blow. I was left for dead as the monster slaughtered the rest of the squad. I was the only survivor. The soldier began to cough, blood coming out in coagulated chunks, until he stiffened and went limp. The harsh murmurs around the group dripped with fear, and panic began to rise. The squad leader looked pained, then said, "All right, we make camp now. When the light returns, we retreat back to the dropship." His admittance of defeat was shocking but well received. So camp was made, and tensions were high. Garther Lanks had never known fear like this before. It was the middle of the night when they heard the screams. The intercoms were filled with horrifying sounds of carnage coming from Second Squad. Garther Lanks turned off his comms only to hear echoes from within the woods, sending shivers down his spine. Then, all of a sudden, the noise stopped, and a horrible silence fell over them. Terror gripped Garther Lanks, and hushed conversations could be heard all around. The squad leader, with a hint of terror in his voice that he was barely holding back, ordered the soldiers to be quiet. None of them slept as the night wore on. Finally, some measure of light filtered in through the trees, signaling the return of day. With the slightly improved visibility, the squad leaders were informed of what had happened. Reports indicated that an unknown sapient species had annihilated Third Squad, so they moved out in retreat. The once indomitable squad was reduced to a state of terror. Never in the history of the Empire had the Emperor's hand failed, yet here they were, being slaughtered. The retreat was hampered by more traps, which ignited chaos within the squad's fragile mentality. The retreat turned into a rout, with soldiers breaking rank and madly dashing toward the edge of the woods, throwing caution to the wind. That's when Garther Lanks saw it. A figure chased after the terrified soldiers. It ran and leaped with unimaginable ferocity, taking out soldier after soldier with extreme prejudice. Garther Lanks saw light through the trees. He was almost back. The dropship's guns could wipe out the terror chasing him. Reaching the edge of the forest, he looked for the dropship in the evening light. But what unsettled him the most was that not only was the ship not there, but there was no one else around either. He looked back at the woods, and there it was standing right in front of him was the monster. Garther Lanks fell over backward, crawling as fast as he could away from the creature. Its long, dark hair was tied behind it, and a scar cut across its face, right along its left eye. The body was surprisingly lean, with 2 small lumps that caught Garther Lanks' eye. His was a reptilian race, but he had heard of mammalian species. His eyes bulged when he realized that she was a woman. He snarled, hating her. How dare a woman threaten him? Who did she think she was? Her scar deepened as she stepped forward, and he remembered his fear. She was, after all, the being responsible for all this destruction. Why, she asked. Why would you attack a hospital full of the elderly, the sick? What evil possessed your commanders to attack the defenseless? That vermin is vermin, second to none, he spat back. Her face contorted in what he thought was disgust before she replied. Vermin? Among those people you murdered were doctors, nurses, caretakers, and assistance, people dedicated to ending suffering. Yet you come here with your violence and bigotry and have the gall to call them vermin. You are the vermin here. But luckily I know how to play the exterminator. Because you left one very bad person alive. She looked up towards the dropship, returning to the battlecruiser. Now I will do my job, she said, pulling out a detonator and pointing it at the dropship. I rewired the autopilot to return here and set my last charge on the core. The explosion should cause a chain reaction inside the ship, destroying it completely. Garther Lanks looked in disbelief as this goddess of violence gazed down upon him with grim certainty. He believed every word she said. The question burst forth from him, almost involuntarily. Who? No. What are you? She looked at him with a mixture of pity and anger before answering. I am vengeance, she said, pressing the detonator. A light came from the ship, followed by a massive shockwave that rippled through the air. The battlecruiser began to fall apart in a fiery blaze. I am wrath. I am wrath. I am human, she declared with cold finality. Garther Lanks felt the ground tremble beneath him as the mighty Jeffraxian battlecruiser, once a symbol of their indomitable power, disintegrated into a million pieces. The sky was alight with the burning wreckage, and the shockwave knocked him off his feet. He lay there, stunned, as the realization of his defeat sank in. The empire that had always seemed so invincible, the empire that had ruled through fear and force, was now crumbling before his eyes. The woman, this human, stood over him, her face impassive, Yet there was a fire in her eyes that made him shudder. "You came here seeking glory and trophies," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of fury. "But all you've found is your own destruction." She knelt beside him, and for a moment, Garther Lanks thought she might show him mercy. But there was no mercy in her gaze, only the cold resolve of someone who had lost too much to ever forgive. "Your empire will fall," she whispered, her words like a prophecy. "And it won't be because of some great army or powerful weapon. It will be because of people like me, those who have nothing left to lose, those who will fight with every last breath to bring down the tyrants who have taken everything from them." Garther Lanks tried to speak, to plead for his life, but his voice caught in his throat. All he could do was watch as she stood up, turned her back on him, and walked away into the shadows of the forest. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the fiery remains of his once mighty ship, a testament to the folly of his ambition and the ruthlessness of his enemy. As the flames consumed the wreckage, they also consumed the last vestiges of Garther Lanks' pride and arrogance. The Jafraxian Empire had been dealt a blow from which it would never recover, and all because of one human, one woman, who had refused to be broken. The forest swallowed her up, and with her, the hopes of a dying empire. Garther Lanks closed his eyes, accepting the inevitable. He had been defeated not by a superior force, but by a single, determined individual who had turned the hunters into the hunted. In the end, the glory he had sought was nothing but ashes in the wind, scattered by the wrath of a woman who had nothing left to lose. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them, thank you for your time.